this
All right.
meeting
All right.
recorded.
Hey, guys, welcome back to the channel. We have got a kind of special guest with us today. We got Idaho Joe, Idaho Preppers, name of your channel, right, Joe?
Yeah, Joe with the Idaho Prepper channel.
Right.
Yep.
And I'll put a link to his channel down in the description box so that y'all can see that. Joe's channel kind of hit me because I grew up in Idaho, so I see the Idaho Preppers. Like, oh, I got to check this guy out, right? Well, this looks fun. And he's so far all the videos I've watched. I've only been watching your channel for like a week now. So far all the videos I've watched have all been kind of mostly about gear. Is that kind of where you're oriented, Joe, or is that am I reading that right?
Yeah, that's pretty much yeah, my channel's niche for the most part. It started out actually, my first video was this pantry. So I just did like a prepper pantry video, and it just uh kind of exploded a little bit, and that's kind of what put me on the map. And so I tried, I'm trying, I don't want to really just stay on one niche and just do one little thing. It gets a little exhausting after a while. So I try to kind of branch out and cover as many topics around preparedness as I can. But it seems like the gear videos definitely do the best. So
Yeah, you can't
people,
stick to
yeah.
one topic because you almost tend to run out of things to talk about. I know for ours, we started out as like a, kind of a homesteading channel, and then it grew into because I was teaching firearms, it grew into us doing this firearm stuff, which kind of has evolved to firearms prepping type of stuff. It all kind of goes together, and so our channel has definitely evolved. You'll look back at it from our old videos, and there's like old like me working on tractor videos and stuff. Everybody now that catches it, it's like, what the hell is this? Like, why is this guy working
Yeah.
on the gun channel? Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, so let's get into the topics today. So what we're going to talk about is first on the list was getting guns and training. So when Joe and I were trying to figure out like, hey, what we wanted to talk about, we thought Joe's not really a gun guy. Is that fair to say? And
Yeah. Fair to
so
say.
we thought, well, okay, let's figure out where we get started, right? So y'all that
Yeah.
watch my channel know it's all about guns, and so getting guns and getting training. I guess Joe, what are you? Give me your thoughts on that.
As far as like how important it is, or
Yeah, how does this fit into your kind of prepper goals? Getting ammunition, getting guns, getting training, because it's not been, for most preppers, it's like this idea of like I need to have a bunch of guns and a bunch of ammo and a bunch of food, and that obviously hasn't been your focus. So I'm kind of curious about your take on that.
yeah. um I mean, I guess the way it's kind of the way I think like everybody just has their own uh kind of ideas of how things are going to go. Some people think that I think that we're headed more into a direction where guns are just going to be something that we're going to have to be using all the time. It's almost like they're taking that kind of approach, like we're going into almost like uh a wartime situation. But I think for it, the way I'm I'm kind of foreseeing it is if firearms do come into the picture in any way, I think the most extreme example would be, if things really broke down in our society, it would be, more of like just a means of defense if somebody was trying to break into your home out of desperation. And but I don't see like a lot of potential for like full blown like combat, I guess you could say. But
Yeah,
as far as like, yeah, it's just a defensive tool like I carry every day. But like we live in a very safe area, so I don't really see it being like a huge threat. But I do carry every day.
yeah, good. Well,
Yeah,
our channel has obviously been built around firearms stuff now, and because we're training full time, and that's so obviously that's a big part of our life. But and like I said, so much of it is these kind of this prepper community gets into this where they just go out and they buy just a shit ton of guns and ammo, and this like to me the training is the most important aspect of it. And
yeah,
I think before you have 10,000 rounds of 9mm stockpiled, you should have 8,000 rounds worth of training. I think that's more important. And
yeah,
I think being effective with your ammunition is a lot more important because, like I said, I'm kind of with you. I don't see necessarily full-fledged civil war in our future, but I could see something certainly like what they saw in Argentina. And if you've ever read Fall's book on that, surviving what the modern economic collapse or whatever it was called. But anyways, he gave a firsthand account about what they saw in Argentina. And it was really, concealed carriers and, home defense were the big facets of it. It wasn't like you had two sides of this war, like in going in exchanging a bunch of ammunition with each other.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
even in the,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, I was going to say, like, even in the most, you take like Brazil or something, right? I think a lot of you, there's that one channel, I always forget there's a YouTube channel, and all he does is he's like, he commentates on these videos. Usually they're surveillance videos that can't capture somebody having to, draw their weapon in a defensive situation. And almost all of them are out of Brazil. You know which channel I'm talking about?
No, that one doesn't ring a bell. I'm not sure which one you're talking. I know I've done videos like that where actually I've taken surveillance footage and gone through it and like here's what they did right and here's what they did wrong and here's one that doesn't have a right or wrong answer. That always comes up. A lot of people like to ask the hard questions. It's like when it comes to security, there's some questions that don't have a right answer.
Right.
But
But it looks like in Brazil there seems to be definitely, there's just so much strong arm robbery there. And so and I guess the laws, maybe they're just, I don't know what the laws are that surround it, but it looks like everybody's carrying. You got half the people who are defending themselves, and the other half are just basically trying to rob the other half.
Yeah, yeah. I think to me, the biggest emphasis that I place on things is on that personal conceal and carry weapon. I think that that's where most people need to spend their time and energy is getting training with. And a lot of people, I mean, don't get me wrong, the rifle training and the shotgun training, all that stuff is fun. But truthfully, I think more people need to spend their focus on getting adequate training with a pistol. I think if you haven't done, a pistol level one, a real pistol skills course, that's where you should be starting with this. And what I
Right.
always tell our students is that you should be getting one professional class every year. If you're going to conceal and carry, you should get one professional class every year. That doesn't necessarily mean from us. There's lots of good trainers out there. My wife and I put our money where our mouth is. We go and get a professional class at least once a year, if not 2 or 3 times a year, from other trainers. And then I think that you need one range day a month where you're actually working on skills, not working on shooting tin cans and shooting beer bottles.
Right. Yeah, I trained like for a couple months with one guy when I first came up to Idaho, and that's about the extent of my training. But he kind of, guided me through the basics, and yeah, and that's pretty much where it came to a close. But I might have, I don't know, I probably have some error in my thinking surrounding that area. But definitely if the situation, like, I definitely wouldn't turn down training. I mean, if it was handed and just kind of put in my lap, but it's not something that I'm seeking out currently. Um, but and not because I'm, you know, going out of my way to not seek it. I probably should be training, but I don't know. What do you think? Like, what are your thoughts? Like, do you think it's better? You're better off carrying every day with like little training, or like not carrying at all? I mean, do you think that people who aren't trained at their firearms should not be carrying one?
Not necessarily, because everybody has to start somewhere, right? And so,
Yeah.
if that's your starting place, then I'm okay with that. If that's your ending point, then that's where I've got a problem with it, because you have
Yeah.
a responsibility, both, I mean, morally, well, all three, I guess, morally, ethically, and probably legally, to get training and to stay proficient with your firearm if you're going to conceal and carry. And so my thinking is that I should be better next year than I am this year. And I should obviously be 10 years better than I was 10 years ago. So,
Yeah.
no, I don't think that just because somebody is not proficient, that should necessarily stop them from carrying their gun, because it takes time to get proficient. And I'll
Yeah.
be honest with you, we trust a lot of people with firearms. We trust a lot of military. We trust our law enforcement. And I'm
Yeah.
ex-military. I love military. I love our law enforcement. But most of them are not proficient with the sidearms that they're actually carrying. You see that a lot with police officers. And we see
Yeah.
that a lot when we go to these training classes and when we go to do the competitions. My wife and I are avid competition shooters, and we see a lot of police officers in there that, well, actually, a lot of them that are very, very good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you've got like Jeremy Story and Pat. Oh gosh, what's his last name? I'm blanking on it. Doonan. It's not right. And anyways, you've got these guys that are like, high end master level shooters, or they're Wilson Combat sponsored or Nighthawk Custom sponsored shooters that are police officers. So there's some guys that are really good. But there's also
Yeah.
a lot of guys that really they just get their qualification twice a year, and that's the extent of their training.
Right.
And so we put a lot of faith into them, and then we say at the same time, well, a conceal and carry person shouldn't be able to conceal and carry because they don't have the training. And it's like, well, they don't have the training that they probably should have, but they probably have more than a lot of the police officers do when it comes to weapons handling.
Right.
So I got to be careful about the way I say that because that can really piss some people off. But because again, I'm not hating on cops. It's just the simple fact is that most cops are cops, not shooters, and
Right.
there's a difference there, and there's a difference in the skill set. And you also have to realize that cops are not paid to be shooters, right? They do carry a gun, but 99%
Yeah.
of their job should be without their gun.
Yeah.
No.
Right. You hear a lot of stories like for instance, have you ever watched that YouTube channel, Mr. Ballin?
That one
He's
doesn't
like
ring a bell.
he's an ex Navy SEAL, retired Navy SEAL that had ended up starting a YouTube channel where he just tells stories. But I was watching this interview with him last night, and he was just basically talking about his whole time he was in Iraq and Afghanistan, and how he's like, I went through all the SEAL training and then all went through SEER training, and how it's not necessary that you're praying for war. He's saying, like, it's not like I wanted to go and fight, but I wanted to put all my training to the test. And how he goes, your ideology and your thinking just totally changes from that point. And then once you find yourself in an actual real life battle situation, like combat situation, and how he's just like, everything is just total tunnel, almost like all the training kind of goes out the window, because you can almost never fully prepare you for training, but under real life pressure. They
Yeah,
can, he said, like, they can simulate it, and like SEER will get really close to simulating like real life, a real life high pressure situation. But at the end of the day, it's just nothing compares to like when you actually have bullets and fragments flying at you and you're seeing people get, shot. And it's almost like it's just a whole different world. He's like, eventually your training comes in and then you can get focused, but almost nothing can prepare you for that moment, where it's, yeah, live or die,
so
trying to
I
fight a
was having
flag.
this conversation at a competition the other day, and actually, it was a conversation regarding one of Masad Ayub's videos. Right, he's talking about how competition actually really prepares you well for civilian engagement because it teaches you how to operate at a higher stress level where you'll have an advantage over somebody that doesn't have that training. And so again, it's not is it a perfect reanimation of a gunfight? No, but it's as close as we can get without actually shooting each other.
Right.
But the conversation was actually about weapon lights, and it was about there's this rule in IDPA where you can leave your weapon light on and move to different covering positions, and all the tactical guys get in there and they say, well, you don't do that. You have to turn off your light and then move to the next firing position and then turn on your light and then fire. And I always ask questions like, how many of y'all have been shot at using a weapon light? Okay, so first thing is that it's different when it's a real life engagement because you don't know where the damn targets are. So you have to use the weapon light to find them. And secondly, when it's dark in there and you're moving that fast and you're getting shot at, I promise you don't think to turn off your weapon light. It's not a natural response. You tend to use that
Yeah.
weapon light to move around and figure out, okay, where the hell am I? Where's this gunfire coming from? I heard bad guys, because it may not be gunfire. It may just be, did I hear something in that next room over? Is that
Yeah.
somebody waiting to ambush me? So
Right.
it's just not reality that like they think in this IDPA. It's like if you're using competition to teach you tactics, that's a mistake.
Yeah.
If you're using competition to teach you weapon handling, you're on the right path.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think one of my biggest concerns is just, I think now, things are so much different now, where maybe 20, 30 years ago, you found yourself in a situation where somebody was threatening your life. you could defend yourself, and that would be the end of it. And but now it's like now we have to contend and worry about the ramifications of things that would happen defending ourselves.
Yeah,
And
that's one of the things we talk to our students about. Actually, is just exactly what you're saying. There is if you got somebody breaking into your house, unless they're between me and my kids, I'm not shooting them. They can have the TV. The TV is insured. You know what I mean? And it's not me being a pussy about it. It's simply I'm not going to prison. I'm not going to fight a $200,000 lawsuit over a TV. It's not worth it.
Yeah, especially especially for people like you and I. I mean, it would be easy for them to just create a case. When they start going through your history on the internet, and like, oh, look at this guy, he's been thinking about this and his whole life. And that's why they always say, like, don't put any type of like signs or symbols on your weapons, that would insinuate that you are almost looking for trouble. But I think definitely, like, my goal is, when I'm out there, my goal is always going to be the same, whether I'm carrying or not carrying, which is I'm just going to, if I sense a dangerous situation, my goal is just going to be to get the hell out of there as fast as I can, and just definitely there was a guy here recently, and it was just, he's got that, what do they, like, Wyatt Earp syndrome, they call it, where he saw this guy breaking into cars, and he went out of his way, got out of his car to go confront this guy. And they got into a confrontation, and he pulled his weapon out. And the guy was trying to take off. He was stealing cars. This happened like right up the way from us too. And the thief was taking the car, and the guy ended up jumping on the hood and just putting like three in this thief's chest. And it's like, now you're going to go to, and then maybe you could make the argument that his life was in danger because he was on the hood of this car, but he definitely put himself in that situation, which wasn't a smart move, in my opinion. I'd have just left that one, called the police, and just stay out of it.
Yeah, unless my life or my kids or somebody like that is immediately affected by this. That's why I say if you come through my front door and you're between me and my kids, yeah, you've got a problem on your hand. But if you come through my front door and my kids aren't home and you're coming in to steal my TV or whatever, I'm just calling the cops, man. We'll hide out in the bedroom. I'll aim the gun at the door and make sure you don't come in there. But get what you can get for 10 minutes because it's all insured.
Exactly.
I'm not going to prison over it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I had, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. There's a slight delay, so I don't mean to keep interrupting you.
That's okay. Yeah, I had my uncle ended up buying me one of the USC or UCSSA or
USCCA.
Yeah, policies, which was like, those things were not cheap. I think it's like $600 a year or something.
Mm-hmm.
The elite package, but I guess it covers you for up to $1 million or more in like litigation if you end up in any type of self-defense situation.
So there's a number of good ones. USCCA is really popular. It's probably the biggest one. My wife and I use US Law Shield, and we've been very happy with that. They have good coverage. I know people that have actually thank God we have not had to use it, but I do know people that have. And they've been real happy with US Law Shield. So that's what we always tout. But again, I don't make any money from US Law Shield or anything. It's just, I think it's a great product. So Armed Citizens Legal Defense Fund is also supposed to be another good one, as well as CCW Safe. Those are all supposed to be very, very good. So, but I would encourage anybody that's going to carry to have that insurance. It is well worth the money. And I know it's a lot of money, but carrying a gun is a responsibility. You have to pay a little price for that responsibility. So I think you have to pay the price of getting training and spending time at the range. You also have to pay the price of the insurance on it. And it is a right, but it is a right that needs to be taken very seriously.
Yeah. So, do you think that they should like make it mandatory that people get like that almost be part of the process of getting a firearm that somebody
I'm a
should receive?
libertarian, so no, I don't. I think the government should be involved with as little as possible. I'm not even a fan of actually making car insurance a requirement. I
Right.
think the government overstepped their role when they made car insurance a legal requirement to drive. It's like, no, I'll buy insurance against uninsured motorists, to protect me from them. So does it screw some people? Yeah, but to me, taking the rights away and forcing people to have a product that they may not want is not right. So no, I don't
Yeah.
think that should be a requirement, because I think the government created the problem in the first place. Um,
Right.
you know what I mean? And so the way the whole DA and the judicial system works creates the problem. So I don't think the government passing more laws would fix the problem.
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah.
okay, well, let's move on then to
Yeah.
kind of carrying the actual firearm. So we talked about potentially talking about Israeli carry versus loaded chamber carry. Actually, how do you go about? I don't know what do you daily carry, and do you keep it loaded?
Yeah. I carry a Smith and Wesson shield, and honestly, I don't keep it chambered. And um,
You better be careful about that, man. They're going to drag you in the comments.
I know, I know. Well, it makes for good content, I guess. But yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not, honestly, I don't have. Here's my thinking on it, and I wish this is why I wanted to kind of discuss the topic, because I'm really not one way or the other. But I think if you were to have a legitimate, that this argument should be based in, it really should just be based in statistics. And usually the way people frame the argument is um like it's almost as if every situation you find yourself in where you would have to draw your firearm, there isn't going to be a split second to chamber around. Like it's got like the thinking is, well, you find yourself, you're not, that there's, it's basically like you're not going to have a, like every situation where you would find yourself in where you need to draw your weapon, it's going to be a situation where you're not going to have a split second to chamber around. It's just going to be
So
like you only have enough time to draw the weapon and put it on target and pull the trigger, but no more time than that.
so a lot of
And
people
so I
tout
guess that's
this
kind of the,
they tout this statistic, right? They say most gunfights are done in 3 seconds with less than 3 rounds at what, like 3 to 7 feet. Okay. And I hear this statistic shouted all the time. And I always ask them the same question. I say, show me your data. And nobody can ever give me the data on it, because there's never been a
right.
study done on it that actually suggests that. And there's no studies done, or at least that I'm aware of, I should say, there's not really any available studies done, and there's no crime report done on that data. So the uniform crime report, for at best, is incomplete, because a lot of police departments don't report to it. Right? If you go by the UCR, then Birmingham is more dangerous than Chicago, but we have less murders. So it's like the UCR is somewhat worthless in that capacity. So my thought is okay. So how do we do this? Well, we got to look at actual civilian gunfights that we have recordings of and that we know what happens. And so, what do we see in civilian engagements? And in civilian engagements, you're going to be somewhere between about 1 and 25 rounds, right? So if it's an active shooter situation, you're going to be closer to that 20 to 25 rounds range. And if it's two guys tussling over something, then it's going to be closer to that 1 to 3 rounds range. And
Yeah.
I want a gun that can handle shots at distance, because we've seen situations, you can read about them in the news. They now have that drill that they run in IDPA. I forget the guy's name that took down the mall shooter from like 30 yards.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I want a gun that is capable of shooting at distance, right? So I want a gun that I can make a headshot at 30 yards standing, and that's hard to do with a snub nose revolver. That's hard to do with even a Smith and Wesson shield. As much as I like a Smith and Wesson shield, it's a great gun, but it's hard to do with guns like that. So my philosophy of carrying is I want a gun that will take me through the most likely course of action and the most dangerous course of action that I'm likely to encounter. Am I likely to encounter mobs? Yeah, I guess it's possible, but I don't think I need 5 magazines to handle that situation. So I carry spare magazines in all my vehicles and in my backpack. And then I carry a Wilson Combat SFT. I'm trying to keep my finger here to cover up the serial number on it. This is my daily carry gun. This is a little bit bigger than a Glock 19. It carries 15 rounds plus one. and it stays in condition one, so it's got one in the chamber. So I've got 16 rounds total. That takes me through most engagers that I would deal with, having to draw my pistol.
Yeah.
The way that I look at it with carrying one in the chamber is I have the ability. It's more than just being able to rack it and having the time to rack it. It's actually having the capability of racking it and having multiple hands, because there's no rule that says that I have both my hands. One hand may be holding a baby. One hand may be holding off the attacker that's coming at me with a knife. One hand
Right.
may be caught in a seatbelt or something like that, may not be able to rack the slide. So there's a number of situations that I come across. So when I look at it, as I say, what gun and what ammo count allows me to complete the majority of tasks that I think that I could run into as a civilian shooter. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Though I guess the way I'm seeing it is it's the debate. I mean, if you call it that, and here's the way I see it. It's about odds. And I mean, this is the way I see it, is it's more about odds. The chances are that I'm going to ever find myself in a situation where I have to draw my weapon in self-defense. If I'm carrying, even if I'm carrying my weapon every single day, someone like me, I'm 47 years old. I've never found myself in a situation in the full 47 years I've been alive where I needed to draw a gun. And it's not to say it can't happen. I'm just saying that that's the odds. I've never found myself in a situation where I needed a fire, where if I had a firearm, that never would have happened. Um, and but if I was carrying a firearm every single day, chambered, there's probably a greater odd that at some point in time I'm going to have a negligent discharge that's going to either injure me or somebody else. So I think that's the debate. And I think that's why they call it Israeli carry, and why why the Israeli army decided that was because it had something to do with their just not having a big military, and so they were putting a higher emphasis on preserving life, and they decided that there was there were greater odds that they would have a negligent discharge and hurt somebody than they would ever find themselves defending themselves with the weapon or something like that,
So
right? That's kind of the debate.
there's a couple of
It's
reasons why you run into Israeli carry, and so you really have to understand the reasoning why. So the first reason why is that when Israel became a country again, right? So about 1948, in 1948, when Israel became a country again, it was basically this hodgepodge of people that created the army, and so they had these weapons from all over the place, and none of these weapons at the time were drop safe either. So you got to realize weapons weren't generally made drop safe, with a few exceptions. Now all pistols are pretty much made drop safe, and so that was one of the issues, is that they would have people with these firearms that were unreliable and unsafe. And maybe I would cock my 1911, and the hammer and the sear was so worn that the hammer would go forward and it would go full auto. And so they didn't want that happening on kind of a daily basis. And so what they decided that they could do is that it was actually easier to train their soldiers to just draw and cock in one movement.
Yeah.
And it took that out of the equation. Now, Israel, I don't believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, they're real familiar with the Israeli army, but Israel does not teach Israeli carry anymore. They actually teach their soldiers to be cocked and locked. And I never worked with any of the Israeli soldiers in Afghanistan, so I can't answer what I've personally seen. But I believe that they've changed their philosophy on that. And another reason for the Israeli carry is you have to realize when an army does something, they do things on a massive scale to protect the most amount of people. And let me give you an example. In the military, you have to wear a PT belt, right? So it's this reflective yellow belt that everybody has to wear. And on Kandahar airfield, so in Afghanistan, they have to wear this stupid PT belt around, right? And the cops here will give you tickets for it, right? So it's like, really, I got a ticket for not wearing a PT belt? I'm in a fucking combat zone and I get this ticket. It's kind of laughable. But the reason that they do it is because the Army figured out that, well, it's cheaper for us to pay $2.70 to get every soldier a PT belt and just order, and they all have them anyways, and I just order you to wear it, and then that might save me one casualty. The study shows that it saves me one casualty from somebody getting hit crossing a road, and so that saves the Army $500,000 in life insurance plus paying out the family for the rest of life. So it's a lot cheaper for them to issue that order. And so the armies will do these things that make sense on a broad scale that may not make sense to an individual. And so that's one thing that you really have to consider when it comes to that, is it's like there's a lot of things that go into the equation. So when people try to use it and say that Israeli carry is a tactical argument, it's really not. It's not a tactical argument. It was an argument for safety for those reasons. And then, like you mentioned, negligent discharges being the safety reason there.
Yeah. So would you say that that is the argument then? It's the people who are, obviously a cop. If I was a police officer, I'm on duty. Obviously, my weapon is going to be chambered because I'm going to have my odds of finding myself in a situation where I need to draw my weapon are much higher. And as opposed to just someone I'm not putting myself in danger. My odds of finding myself in a situation are going to be a lot less. So, in other words, the argument is I'm carrying chamber because there's a greater chance that I'm going to find myself in a situation where I'm going to need every split second, compared to I'm going to find where it's a safety issue and the odds are greater that I'm at some point going to have a negligent discharge and shoot myself or somebody else. And I think the argument to if that's how you feel, you're going to make mistakes, then you shouldn't be carrying. But
I disagree with that. I would rather you carry Israeli carry than not at all.
Yeah. So don't you say that's, would that be the argument then? If I was to say, well, I'm not going to carry because I don't have a lot of training. I think this is my thinking, and I don't want to run the risk of having a negligent discharge. And maybe somebody's response would just be like, well, then, you need to be more safe and just learn your weapon more so that accident never happens.
So I do think it's a training issue, and I think that if somebody doesn't feel comfortable carrying with a loaded chamber, they should get more training. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't actually be carrying now. I think as you get more training, I think you'll probably develop that comfort level to where you're like, okay, I can actually carry this with a loaded chamber. But it's one of the ways that you teach people to appendix carry that are really uncomfortable appendix carrying because they're uncomfortable with it pointing at their groin or at their femoral artery. And it's like, okay, take the gun and unload it and carry it unloaded for 2 weeks, and then put a magazine in the chamber or a magazine in the gun and carry it unchambered for a month. And then after those 6 weeks, if it hasn't gone off, then load one into the chamber and carry it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's a way of building that comfort over time. So do I think Israeli carry is tactically unsound? Yes, I do. I think that you should carry with one in the chamber, but I would rather you carry Israeli carry than not at all. And I think that while you're building that comfort level, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that I think you should carry regardless of, unless you're just completely uncomfortable that you're not going to be, that you're a type of person that holds your finger on the trigger while you're pointing down the firing line. Obviously those people should not be carrying. But I think if you're new and just uncomfortable, I think the only way to get comfortable is to start carrying and to start working on training and working that process. So you don't learn how to hunt by sitting at home reading about hunting. You learn how to hunt by going out and deer hunting, and you're going to make mistakes your first time. You're going to make mistakes the 100th time.
And I think too, like because there was a period when I was getting that training where the guy who was getting trained, he was just adamant, like, you have to chamber, like you can't walk around without a without a round in your chamber. And he was just so adamant about it. And I just wasn't comfortable. I almost had to stay conscious of it all the time. And I think that's kind of it is a bad habit. You don't want to get used to carrying a weapon unchambered and then decide, okay, I'm going to change my mind today and start walking around with a round chamber. And then and then you forget. And then that's really when accidents happen. So definitely I could see it's something that you just have to make a final decision about and then not look back.
Yeah, no, I think that as long as people are willing to continually make it better, I think that and continually advance in the process, I think that's really the important thing. But Joe, we're actually running out of time now, so we're gonna have to let y'all go with that. Like I said, I've got his description and a link. I'll put a link to his channel down in the description. So if y'all want to check that out, head over there, subscribe to his channel. He's got some interesting stuff to listen to. Other than that, Joe, do you have anything you want to say signing off?
No, I learned. It was a good learning experience. So,
Well,
but
thanks
it
a
was
lot. I
great.
appreciate you. Appreciate you coming on. We'll catch you all in the comments.
All right, thanks, buddy.